Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Murray, coordinating producer at Pellet Media and Engaging Students. Pellet has been creating free educational resources for students, teachers, and related communities for 20 years. Today, I'm pleased to bring you a discussion on tips and advice for high school and college students who suddenly find themselves with their classes meeting remotely. Most schools have adopted remote instruction or virtual instruction in response to COVID-19. We're seeing a lot of excellent resources for educators, including a panel discussion from Engaging Students last week, how to prepare for online teaching. Yet I'm seeing all over the news and social media that students are understandably struggling, not only with the abrupt schedule change, but also the source of this change and all of the significant ripple effects. Our goal today is to let students know how best to prepare to learn remotely and help them get a sense of how they can control some of their educational experiences, expectations, and advocate for the things that they need. That's why I'm so pleased to introduce today's panelists, Chapman, Nicki Vander Meulen, and Rich Gorham. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome. Thank you.
Good to be here.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us. Briefly, CC is a business and management instructor at Wheaton College in Massachusetts. He's taught extensively online. Nicki, in addition to being a juvenile attorney, is serving on the Madison Metropolitan School Board in Wisconsin. She's the first recognized autistic person in the nation to hold a seat on a local school board. Rich is a teacher at Lawrence High School in Massachusetts, a coach at Phillips Academy in Andover, and a board member at Breadloaf Teachers Network. I'm going to turn this discussion over to our team. Cece, I want to toss the first question over to you. What are the very first or essential things that you think students need to understand about what's happening in education due to the COVID-19 school closures? Over to you.
Oh, that's an easy one, right? It's one of the, I think the very first thing I know is, at least what I like today, tomorrow we start virtual teaching, online teaching. We're not calling it online classes because we didn't prep for this. This is a last minute thing. And I think the most important thing, at least I sent an email today to all my students and my advisees saying, listen, school is important, learning is vital, but this is not the most important thing in your world right now. I mean, we are in unprecedented, these kids have never, ever been through anything like this, and neither have we. That was the other thing I stressed to them was that, your teachers, your professors, your school administrations have not been through anything like this before either. And I'm making it, Wheaton's made it really clear, and I'm making it clear, I know every professor's making it really clear that, listen, if you have any issues, whether it is, you're just having an emotionally tough day, some of our students, their families might already be dealing with a sick family member or somebody they know, a friend, and if they don't, that's going to be, as the weeks go on, there's a strong possibility of that. And that's going to make learning so much harder. And the fact that they're online, they're magically at their house, doesn't necessarily make it more comfortable for them. And I tried stressing it to my students, if you have an issue of any sort, because whether it's internet connectivity, family situations, mental health, physical health, any of those things, to talk to us even more. I think any teacher does that anyways, but now more than ever, it has to happen because this is uncharted territory. I think that's the first thing we have to tell our students is that we're all going to figure this out together, but anybody who is a teacher or works in education of any sort, I've never met one that doesn't care about the kids. And yes, I still call them kids. I'm sorry. I call them kids to their face too, but I think they need to understand that, this is going to be difficult and to keep those lines of communication open. I know I have students overseas and I'm like, if we chat's easier than email, let me know, whatever, we've got all the technology, let's use it. So I think that's the first thing is to put them at ease that yes, learning is important, but it's not the most important thing in your world right now. And we understand that. And that's hard to say coming from a school, but I think that's, when they realize that, you got to lead with compassion and empathy. I think that's where you got to start.
Excellent. Yeah.
Echo Cece exactly all the way down the line there. Our number one responsibility as educators and a message I want to say to students and families is, let's take care of each other through this crisis in all ways. And as we engage in online learning, let's take care of each other as we do this. This is going to be new for most teachers. It's going to be new for most students. Let's be in contact with each other. Let's talk each other through it. Now more than ever, students and families need to advocate for what they need in order to make this work. And also, I urge that we all be patient and take care of each other and express that empathy that Cece said so well.
I would agree with I would agree with both of our fellow panelists. We are in uncharted waters, but we also have to realize there are multiple kinds of learning. Very much, it's not just following a strict schedule. You can learn ecology by walking outside, checking out the leaves, checking out the trees, checking out the birds that happen to be there. Great, you have a biology lesson, you have a science lesson, and you're getting some necessary outdoor time because, let's be honest, this much screen time might not be good for anyone. And so we need to realize that. Also, again, our teachers are doing the best they can with what they have. I'm in a district of 27,000 people with 5,000 students. We have 50 plus schools. So unfortunately, as much as I would like to go as fast at implementing online learning as some of the smaller districts, I cannot do that. Not that I don't want to, but it's just not feasible and it's not able to be done equitably. We had to work on getting laptops to everyone and making sure that rural connection is there. Wisconsin has some rural parts that, very simply, 5G isn't an option. So I have to make sure that works. Additionally, the reason we called school later than most districts, we had 1,500 students who either are homeless or food insecure. We needed to set that up. And so a lot of the people who are very well-meaning, and they've been wonderful, sometimes they get a little frustrated, and I get that. But it's just, we're trying to do what's best for everyone. That doesn't mean I'm asking don't accommodate or don't state what you need. I need to know what your needs are. Right now, we've done a packet of enrichment, which isn't accessible, and I realize that's not accessible. I apologize to our students for that. We are working with the Department of Public Instruction to make it accessible. But we have to realize that we're all in it together and just to help as many people as possible.
Excellent. And I love that you all sort of led with this point of compassion because it seems like that has to be the starting point. And let's say, though, that this continues on and we're in this space of remote learning sort of indefinitely, but that maybe, students are starting and teachers are saying, okay, I'm in a little bit of a rhythm. And maybe those students find themselves having some of the traditional challenges. So, how would you recommend, say, a student address things like time management or scheduling their day, especially if they don't have the same, they don't have to show up to class because there isn't, there's this virtual space. So what about some of those things about time management, scheduling, that kind of stuff?
I can definitely relate. I'm also an attention deficit, so I can see how this would be an issue as someone who would love to sleep till noon, but it's not good for me. Also would love chocolate cake for breakfast, also still not good for me. What I do is I use an online scheduler. I have Google Calendar that alerts me with cute little emoticons of, today we do this. It sounds juvenile. Guess what? It actually works. Additionally, and sounds extreme, but I put parental controls on my phone that I have a friend actually who uses them because very simply, 6 hours of online gaming is not good for anyone. And very simply, I know myself well enough to say, I need someone else to pull the reins back because my external locus control is not going to do it automatically. Sometimes you have to use technology too to say, hey, I need to pull back. because I can talk, I can work hard, but the time management and the organization are not something that come easy. Now add the fact I'm in the legal profession, which specializes in not accommodating individuals very well to begin with. So I found a lot of tricks of, okay, I have a phone app that says to do, and I check it off and it makes this cool little sound when you check off the button. You can set the different ringtones. I'm easily amused. But we do those kind of things so that way you can focus on it. Or you set a goal. I'm going to do this, this, and this. Then I get an hour of watching cartoons, being online within reason. Social protocols still have to exist. I don't want our kids burned out by online because bullying still happens and other things still happen, and we can't forget that. But just try and keep it as normal as possible, but still realize you're human. You're not going to be perfect. There are going to be days you will have chocolate ice cream or cake for breakfast. There are days that you are going to end up doing more online surfing than work. You just realize this cannot be routine and just focus on that. Also, I think what will help a lot of students is if schools and the social events make them online. For example, what I keep hearing from students is, am I going to miss the senior prom? Am I going to miss my graduation ceremony? To a non-teenager, this doesn't sound like a major issue. To an 18-year-old, this is a major issue. I'm not going to see my friends for how many months? I'm not going to be able to walk the stage at graduation to accept my diploma. I think we need something in place, even if it's online, so that people can at least say, I had the experience. Because if they don't, it adds to the loss, and it makes them feel like that's just another thing that was taken from me.
Nicki's been very wise in all of the above. And as I've been in conversation, my district has not launched online learning. They're still exploring and trying to figure out how to do it. I'm in a high poverty district, and many of our families, the technology access is a major obstacle and a major hurdle. And the district is working with community resources and city government to try and figure out how to do that. Some students have been reaching out to me in the meantime because they're craving a schedule, they're craving a routine, both because it's healthy and also because it feels normal to do that. I have students emailing me and saying, I'm working on that research project that we've been working on, and I want to continue to work on that because that's a grounding for them. I'm encouraging the students I'm talking to build a schedule, however that works for you, on a piece of paper, through a phone, but have a daily schedule that says that this is when I will do schoolwork, this is when I will go for a walk outside with proper social distancing, this is when I will not be looking at a screen. I'm concerned about how many hours we'll all be looking at screens over the next few months, and I think we need to schedule time to not look at screens. And also time to just play and not think about the serious things. All of that, I think, needs to be built into a schedule, which I think will help us both do things academically, but also remain mentally healthy. My biggest concern for my students over the next few months is not that they learn where the comma goes or how to properly cite a source in their research paper. I want to teach them that, but I'm much more concerned about them remaining mentally healthy, engaged intellectually, so that when our lives do return to normal, we're ready.
Yeah, and I think you said it right too, where you've got to, their schedule has to include non-academic stuff for sure. You know, to get outside or to turn off the news. I mean, don't. It's too easy to open up Twitter and just watch it, and because that's not good for any of us, right? Let alone our students. And I'm in a little bit of a different situation where I'm dealing with college students, so they're already used to having to get up and go to class already. But I know more and more schools, as I've talked to more educators, you know, they're kind of taking that asynchronous approach where you don't have to show up at 10:30 in a Zoom call to do it. I know personally for me, I'm teaching my classes at 10:30. I do tomorrow morning at 10:30. I have a Zoom call with my class, and I told them, you do not have to be here. I used to teach a 9:30 and a 10:30 of the same class. I'm like, at 10:30, I'm doing this one section. If you can make it, you can make it. If not, I'm going to have it recorded. There's going to be an audio only version. I haven't told my students yet, but I plan on saying, hey, why don't you pop this open on your phone and go for a walk while you're listening to it if that will help. You don't have to, your learning doesn't have to be right here sitting at a computer. That's something else that I think we need to pay attention and think about it, is the fact that I know so many of my students are going to be watching my class or doing their learning, I don't care where on their phone, right? And let's face it, this screen is very different than a classroom learning experience. And I think we need to make sure that educators at all levels are thinking about that, because that might be the only place they have, enough data to pull up something. So we're being very cautious about, download size, how big is our, and that's a whole other technical level, and then thinking about, ADA compliance, having captions for, on anything I say, there's ways to do that. And then also I have last time I counted, I think I had 17 different countries represented in my classrooms, so different languages. So, it's one thing if I'm in class to say, hey, professor, what did you say again? Can you stop? It's a whole other thing on a Zoom call to do that. So yeah, it's going to be really tough. I know I have 2 kids in college who are switched to online learning, and they are not online learners. They are not. I think that's the other thing we have to realize is some kids are not, right? Some kids need that. We know if you've ever taught, there's different levels of learning in different ways, and some kids are meant for online learning, some are not. Some topics are easier online than others. I think of my daughter who's an art student, and she's doing fiber arts right now virtually. That doesn't work. Biology is tougher. There are ways, right? So I think I'm blessed that I'm teaching, business and marketing. I can do that online, but there are bigger hurdles for a lot of different. But what I'm excited about is I hope I'm seeing a lot of I hope we'll see some experimentation. Like Nicki said, go for a walk and do ecology or biology or something. There's so, with safe distances, of course. There's all, I hate that we have to keep saying that, and I just touched my face to go with it. But I just think the students, I really, really hope if families or students are watching it, they realize that we're all, it's so weird and strange, and you've got to realize that, yes, you got to learn. Yes, and I do think most teachers are being a little bit more flexible this semester. I know I'm not going to grade the citations. I have a research paper due in 3 weeks, and I know I'm not going to be as hardcore, because I'm not that hardcore on it, but I'm certainly not going to be like, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. I love the way that all of you are thinking about how to keep students feeling connected. And Nicki, that was a really interesting idea about holding a virtual prom, which I'm sure does feel like less, but it does mitigate some of that loss. And I wanted to kind of come back to that because in our earlier conversation last week, Cece, I remember there was a big discussion just around how one of the things we were hearing, and I'd love to hear from all of you on this, is that one of the hardest parts for students is not being able to have that connection with peers and classmates, and especially that kind of, not exactly impromptu, but something like that, just the spontaneous connection that the chit chat and the so forth. So, what are some of your thoughts for, doing a virtual event is a great idea. And what are some other ways to kind of try to create more of that interaction or connection for students?
Best way I know is to try, can you hear me?
Thank you.
But best way I know is, I like the Zoom and other programs, the background, the funny hair, the weird things. I know it sounds weird, but it actually humanizes people to actually, it's hard to be stressed and frustrated when your friend is dressed like Hello Kitty. It just is. Let's be 100% honest. People have to realize this is socially isolating. Doesn't mean I'm going to socially have no contact with the outside world. We are not asking someone to be a hermit. We're asking them to socially distance. That doesn't mean emotionally cut people off. And people don't realize that. and think, oh, I must have no contact with anyone, otherwise I am hurting the world. The other thing is we have to be understanding and flexible, whether it be in social or general. I'm seeing online, shaming people for having to go to the store to get groceries if they can't get online because there's a 6-day delivery period is probably not the most helpful. But otherwise, socially, okay, here's how we do things normally. Now, let's say you're turning in an assignment. How can we make this so that people say one thing about each other, or ask that when you turn in the work? Start class, ask how people are actually doing. People online are more willing to be open than they would be in person. And the key, though, on that is no judgment. You have to realize that if you allow judgment on the comments, it'll turn into a bullying situation, and then people won't talk at all, which I do a lot of juvenile work. That's what I focus on. So I've had more Snapchat arguments, Instagram arguments, Facebook wars, etc., that have turned into real life fights and some serious violence that can be very well avoided by just saying that's your opinion and not challenging someone, because we are all in this together.
I know one of the things from a purely technical standpoint, I was looking at the other day where Zoom has breakout rooms in it. I'd never used them before. And where literally you can just go, like, if I had 20 people, I can go break this into breakup rooms of 4 people, and it would randomly assign them, or I can assign them to that. And I'm planning on doing literally like for 2 minutes, go do something just to at least get the kids to be like, whoa, wait, what just happened? We're in our little room by ourselves now. Just to try it out and break it up and those sort of things. It's also been really difficult because we do lots of group assignments at Wheaton, a lot of experiential learning, go out and build a marketing plan for a local business. I had to kind of change that one this week. So changing to, I actually reached out to small businesses of friends that I knew could do online, because not all businesses could do online either. I'm going to try to do some just like you said, like I love Nicki's idea of silly stuff. Just be really careful when you turn on that feature on Zoom to put backgrounds, because some kids will be jokers with that background. So be careful with that. I love the experimentation, but I know I've seen all sorts of inappropriate things pop up behind people's heads. Not my students, because we haven't done it yet. But it's going to be tough. The experiential side, the whole prom, and my son's college graduation got canceled the other day. And just so it's tough. And a lot of these kids, I know I wasn't ready for it till one of the few students. I usually don't follow my students on Instagram, but I formed when you eat dinner at their house in Mumbai, you're allowed to follow them on Instagram. And I didn't even think of it when she was like, I just realized I'm never going to see some of my friends again, because she had to come back and so students are dealing with that sort of stuff. It's one thing when it's your town. So not college, kids are from all over the world. So they are. So I'm also hoping to do some like silly stuff. I'm not quite sure what yet, but just to, outside of the classroom stuff. That's why I'm having open office hours. I'm like, swing by anytime, be polite, because who knows who else is going to be there. But I love Nicki's idea too about, checking in, having them talk about how they're doing, because I always start my classes of anything in the news catch your attention. So I am not going to do that tomorrow morning. No way. But instead, I'm totally planning, how are you doing? And I know it's going to send my class into complete chaos as everyone talks over each other and, doesn't know how to use Zoom yet. But I don't care. I'm okay with that, because I want to have that sort of check-in. I think it's important we do it on a regular basis, because some students are going to be fine, but a lot of students are not going to be. And the ones that are really, really quiet, we got to make sure we check in on, because some of the ones that are going to need it the most they're not going to raise their hand and say, I need help. We know that.
I'm thinking 2 things, both the acknowledgement and then a challenge. And so step 1, acknowledging that sense of grieving, the sense of loss that all of us are going through. This is different, and it's not what we expected, and there's going to be senses of loss and going to be senses of grieving, and acknowledging that that's true and sharing our stories about that, I think is critically important, because when we start sharing our stories, I'm feeling sad because I'm going to miss out on prom. So am I. We've now built a community. So one being acknowledgement, and then the second, as we all try and figure this out together, is let's, not be afraid to challenge each other and say, can we come up with creative solutions? None of us as a species have done this before. So let's be creative and put our minds together and, students and educators together. Like, if we can't do a prom live, how can we do a virtual one that might be cooler than the one we would have done live? And let's collectively brainstorm that and use every opportunity as an opportunity to build the community that we will miss by not being in the same room.
Yeah, and it's funny on that. I was just thinking about it because I was thinking like, how could you do prom virtually? And I know last night, when we're recording this, some DJ, I'm sorry, I don't know him, but there was a DJ last night that had tens of thousands of people on Instagram. He was like just spinning tunes in his house. And I guess he's a big deal. I didn't recognize his name, but in Instagram, like you can give, if you're hosting, you can give permission for other people to jump in. So they had celebrities like jumping in, dancing in their houses. And I don't know, students I'm sure would be like, I don't know about that, but it's funny how silly unleashes silly in other people. So maybe that's one. I don't know. I just realized I was all over the news this morning though. So, and I think what would be fun, ask the kids. Ask the students. I bet you they're going to come up because they're going to, like, my daughter today was moving out of her dorm room in college, and I said, make sure you take a picture. She goes, of course, I'm going to have to film my goodbye video. I said, you're what? She said, yeah, Dad, everybody's filming goodbye videos. I was like, okay, sorry, I didn't know. So ask the students if they can come up with ideas. Maybe there's a fun assignment, right? Hey, brainstorm. How could we come up with this? What are the obstacles? What are the hurdles? See what people come up with. It could be kind of fun. Now I want to do that. We don't do prom, but now I want to.
I agree. I think that's a great idea. Additionally, in terms of accessibility, this is the one area that the disabled may have more of an edge. We've been using technology and a lot of these features for years that most people haven't. When you're immunocompromised or in a town that is not handicapped accessible, you get creative. People always ask me, why do you have such a large Facebook presence or that many people? Because that's how the disabled talk, because I don't drive. If I can't drive and I can't get there, I have to find a way to connect and meet people. And that's a way to do it. So I think we could use some of our unique challenges actually as an asset instead of as a hindrance.
I love that. I love it.
Agreed. I really like how I think one thing that you're all saying, like a piece of advice for students is don't be afraid to be a collaborator. And here's the opportunity to, hopefully that's the orientation of your teachers anyway. But if not, this might be a time when that collaborative space is even more open, What a cool idea to have, the prom and everybody's jumping in and dancing or something like that. It's great. Rich, I wanted to touch on something because you were saying, and Nicki, this might also apply to you, but I think you said specifically that you're in a high poverty area. Are you seeing, what are some of the concerns that you think might be specific to some of your students that maybe, people might tend to gloss over or not recognize? Do you see some particular concerns, and what do you think are some ways to maybe address some of those concerns?
Well, thank you for asking. And first off, in high poverty areas and intentionally oppressed areas, tragedies and crises affect folks much more so than affect more resourced folks. So everything that everybody's dealing with in the country, impacts some folks more than others. Access to food, access to healthcare, being in safe housing, all of those things. So the basic needs of our students. So in our district, our initial conversations have just been, worrying about making sure that all of our students have access to those resources, to the basic resources. Many students depend upon the school for food, for counseling, for access to medical care. The health clinic is in our school, and many of our students use that for just their routine basic medical care. So dealing with all of that stuff, right off the bat, is our number one concern. Secondly, if we're going to do distance learning, then technology access. Many of our families do not have computers in the home, do not have reliable computers in the home, or maybe there's one laptop to share among 7 folks. and internet access is a challenge for many folks too. Many of our families are living in blended families, or with two families living in one house. So there's a lot of folks in a small space. So the notion like you'd go off in your room, your private room with your laptop to engage in your academic work at home is a challenge. Many of my students live in multiple languages, and many of my students have told me in the past that they have a hard time doing homework at home because home is a place where the home language is spoken. And so they do their homework at school or in the library because that's an English language space for them. So many of my students if they're going to engage in distance learning are going to have to deal with a lot of that stuff. And our district, and I know many cities across the country, are trying very hard and doing great work in getting technology to families that maybe don't have access. And that's great. But that also means that a learner will now be working with a piece of technology that they're not really familiar with. Right now to do this call, I'm using my laptop that I use all the time. I'm very familiar with it. If you gave me a brand new computer and told me to do an assignment on it, it would take me a while to figure out that new computer. So all of these are challenges that I think we need to acknowledge and talk our way through. And know that families are going to be dealing with these challenges. And so as I speak, if there are families or students watching, we know, we see you, we hear it. Please raise your hand when you're on the Zoom call, send the email to your teacher and say, this is what I'm struggling with, and let's get together and figure out how we can work through it.
I agree 100%. We have some areas that are incredibly high poverty, and we're getting internet from right now being donated, but that affects the speed of bandwidth, so things can't always be turned in. Our bigger problem, though, besides that, is one, food insecurity, which is huge. The other one, which people aren't talking about, is domestic violence. I have kids in abusive situations, whether it be child abuse, whether it be domestic violence, where home is not a safe place. And what we're doing is say, stay home. And I have kids who are like, they're terrified to stay home. And we can't send them to the shelter right now. So we're trying to do the best we can to keep them as safe as possible. But school's probably going to be their last priority right now. Staying safe is their first. The last thing they should be worried about, am I going to pass English? I don't think we should fail anyone in this particular situation because we don't know what they're going through. And they may not tell us. They may be used to everything is okay. Also, we're in a window that shows all the pictures, okay? How many houses are going to do that? And how many people are going to do that who may not be ashamed of where they live or for safety reasons, or who are living out of the back of their car? All of those people, we have to realize, are going to access our resources in different ways. I see these people, I hear them, and I wish to help as much as humanly possible. But I also have to realize that I'm doing the best I can with what I have. But we also have to take steps to realize we can't just isolate and say, they didn't pass and turn in this, and this. We got to ask, why didn't they turn in this, and this? And there may be a very good reason. I had a client of mine who was late for an entire semester till someone asked. His mom had gotten switched to third shift. He was in charge of getting his little brother to school. Those are situations that do happen. And so we have to also be compassionate of those situations.
Yeah, and I know, and some little, like, I wish I remembered who I saw this. I've been, following a lot. I follow a lot of educators on Twitter, and I remember I saw someone talking about encouraging all professors, but this could happen at the high school level too, where it said, make your assignments due Sunday night at midnight. And their logic was, listen, some of these people at home, they're going to now be the caregiver for the kids because mom and dad or dad or grandma, whoever, are out still working. And they've got to watch the kid during the day. To say turn in a homework tomorrow by 5 o'clock isn't a reality. They're going to have to catch up on the weekend or off hours and weird things like that. So I did. It was when I read that, I go, whoa, I hadn't thought about that. The issue I'm worried about now, and I don't know if anybody has found a solution to this, like I know I have some students who I've gotten to know very well, and they're going to be struggling. And like getting stable internet access to get access to online learning, the original thought a week and a half ago was, well, they could go to the library, or McDonald's and Starbucks have solid Wi-Fi. That's no longer an option anymore. And I don't know, like that's one thing where I'm like, I don't know what we're going to do. Because there are going to be students who, go to the library, do the work, go to McDonald's. That was an option. It is not an option, and it's not going to be an option for a while. So I don't know how we deal with that. Have you guys run into, Rich, you were talking about giving technology out. Are you actually giving like hotspots and stuff, or?
Our city government is working with our school district on trying to figure that out, and there are a number of cities around the country who are engaging in that, and it's a burgeoning thing that I applaud, and it requires city government to work with school districts and to work with internet providers and technology companies to work out a plan to provide that. But the goal is to put a laptop with working Wi-Fi in the home for every family.
I mean, it's not a positive, but like the digital divide's been there forever, and whether it's rural, whether it's, poverty reasons, whether it's urban. I mean, there are lots of places in this country that don't have stable, reliable, fast internet. And I have seen some things about, towns and government stepping up, but man, I hope more do, because it's sad that it takes something as big as a pandemic to shine a light on all these issues that have been there. We all know, I know everybody on this call knows they've been there for a long time, but hopefully, I'm glad to hear that I'm glad that's happening, because there's so many kids who don't have access. They just don't have the access to technology.
The other access thing that I find really interesting is the fact that a lot of the jobs that we stated were not accessible, that there's no way we could work from home, are suddenly now being, we could work from home. Well, how many of those where people with disabilities could have done the jobs, but no one was willing to make the accommodations until they had to? And when the pandemic ends, will we be as accommodating again?
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Nikki, too, about, the barriers we throw up before we even, give somebody a chance to try something. And I do hope that that is a positive outcome, right?
I applied to 300 law firms. No one hired the minute they found out I was autistic. I had to open my own. I've been open 12 years.
Yes. But
Well done.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. For sure. But it shouldn't have to be that way.
No, it shouldn't.
No, and I know, Cece, that's not what you're saying. I agree. That's like a monumental achievement for sure. I think it's probably time to kind of wrap this up a little bit. I think we've had a lot of great sort of insight and takeaways. If you wanted to give a student one piece of advice on something that we haven't touched on yet, say it could be, what should I do if I'm feeling depressed, or how do I get help on an assignment, or anything that you're just hearing in your communities that you think, yes, let me give this last piece of advice that a student can take away and apply to, what's coming down the pike, or, just started right now. So, what's the sort of last takeaway for the students that, we're all thinking about?
Mental health is your priority. School is important. Nothing's more important than your life and your family, and that if you have problems, please tell someone. Mm-hmm. This isn't a judgment zone. We all are going through this. Mm-hmm. Because I'm terrified that the number of suicides will go up with people saying they can't see how I feel. No, this is something we have to realize. I'm struggling emotionally. I can't even imagine. But I want these kids to realize they come first. This is one time you're allowed to be selfish and say, no, this is what I need. If it means not watching the news during dinner because it causes you to have anxiety, which, by the way, I had to implement in my own house with my parents because I'm sorry, I cannot handle it right now. But you are the most important person and you have to realize that your health comes first.
I underline and echo everything Nicki just said, absolutely. And I want to add that, unfortunately, we've seen a spike in racism, particularly anti-Asian racism. And my plea is for all of us to stand up and say no, and to come out of this. We will come out of this. Let's come out of it more empathetic and come out of it less racist, come out of it more together than we went into it. And I think collectively we need to stand up and embrace that role as anti-racist educators, anti-racist learners, anti-racist activists. As we move to online learning, that's also a place where there's historically been a lot of bullying, as people can make comments that they feel a little bit distant from. And it's a collective responsibility, I think, for all of us to stand up and be more empathetic, not less empathetic. Wow.
I was trying to think of something lighthearted, and I guess 100% what was just said. 100%. If you're not taking care of your self-care is vital, especially because some students may have lost the services they're used to having access to. So it scares me what's going to happen. But directly to the students, I guess what I would say is, first, stay inside. Don't, keep that social distancing. I mean, I know my students, I have faith, but take this seriously. This is a big deal. It's nothing to joke about. And also just take time to do the silly stuff. Get up, do a dance party, or if you need to scream, go find a pillow or in the shower and scream. Primal scream feels good. Warn your parents or your teachers before you do that. I mean, doing those little things to get away from the screen, because it is way too easy, especially over the next couple months as we get through the rest of the semester. It's going to be way too easy to stay firmly planted on your butt with your tablet or your laptop and your phone and not move. Get up, move around, get the fresh air, the hot shower. It helps. So don't forget those things. Make sure it's not all about the school and not the school and the pandemic. Don't make it about just those two things, because make it about anything else. Even if it's just 5 minutes escape. This afternoon, I made my wife go sit outside in the cold, but it was sun for 10 minutes just to sit there and be like, we're not bringing our phones out. We're just going to sit. And we had that luxury to be able to do that. I understand. But just 10 minutes of we're going to get away from it all. And it was cleansing. So just take the time you need. And be good to each other, right? We're in this together. We got to act it.
Absolutely.
Thank you all. That was a really amazing discussion. And I just think the takeaway just keeps coming back to, self-care, being compassionate, and, allowing yourself your humanity and the ups and downs of whatever you're feeling and going through, and to look to be collaborators and advocates for yourself, and that there could be some interesting silver linings and interesting opportunities, helping design online prom or so forth, or finding the silly thing that everybody does when you get together for your period of synchronous learning. So thank you for joining us. Again, I'm Jessica Murray for Engaging Students. Really a terrific discussion. Thank you, Cece, Rich, and Nicki. Your advice and insight will support so many students and educators and families all dealing with this surprise shift. So thank you. For more resources around engaging students, please visit engagingstudents.com. For more info on our panelists, please check out their bios and links on the page. And thank you to all of our viewers. Please give us a shout out in the comments. Let us know how we did or what you'd like to see more of. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
See ya.